Include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to a wet and grizzly South African lowveld. We're in search of all the African wonders, from the bullfrog to the elephant. This is Safari Live. Ready?
Standing by.
You are live, you are live.
Welcome. My name is Brent Smith. I have the incredible Veerm on camera, and we're right deep south on the Djuma southern edge, and we are looking for one of our favorite leopards, Shongile. I know Tristan had her hunting impala last night in this area, and if she was going to be successful, that was perfect last night. Across really slowly because as you can see it's been drizzling quite heavily and the light's quite bad, so it's quite difficult to see tracks. So we are going very slowly. Hopefully she's going to pop up.
And a very good...
Remember, if you want to talk to us, which we really encourage you to do, use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter to get hold of us. Ask questions about all the amazing animal wildlife, or anything else you'd like to know what happens in and around the Sabi Sands. Now, come on, little Shongile. Where are you hiding? So our plan is we're going to check all the way down to Twin Dams. If we get no luck with Shongile, then we'll probably go have a look at the hyena den. Now Ali's out, she's headed up to the north, and she's crossed her fingers hoping the Inkahomas have come down from the north. And of course, with the wet weather we've got to put someone in the tent to keep warm and dry, and that's Jamie. So let's go say good morning.
A very good morning to all of you, and welcome on our sunrise safari, where, as Brent has already told you, it is a somewhat dark and grisly start to the morning. My name is Jamie, and this morning Gendre is on camera with me. My goodness, Gendre, I have not had you on camera in a very long time. Chandra, of course, has been very busy with some top business stories, very busy with some top secret things that he's been up to, so that's where Chandra has been. Right, so this morning, there is just enough rain, just enough for protocol to dictate that we are in fact inside the tent this morning. Brent, Ali and myself of course fought over who gets to go in the tent, since it is a little bit dark and grisly and generally uncomfortable outside. I must say, one finds that after the boys have been in this tent, they do leave behind a frightful mess, apart from James. James, I have to confess, is incredibly fastidious and is very good at keeping his tent clean. But Byron, my goodness, what a mess he has left with us. And while I've been doing my spring cleaning, actually, I have to confess that Chandra spotted it, we found a spider web on the chair. And of course, our lovely lady inhabitant of the spider web on the chair that I plan to sit on for the rest of the morning has since ducked away. She was very obligingly hanging out around here. It is in fact the web of a brown button spider. So not only do we have to beat off the brown button spiders every morning whenever we get into the vehicles, but it seems as though they have now invaded the tent as well. I think she's gone in here, into this little canvas slip. It's such a pity that she did, because I really wanted to show you that bright red abdomen marking. Hourglass. It was perfectly hourglass shaped. But unfortunately, she's become somewhat camera shy. Of course, button spiders, one of our more deadly and more venomous of the spiders that we get out here. Most of our spiders are completely harmless. Button spiders, I know a couple of people that have been put in hospital by them. It's very unusual. They're very sort of unaggressive spiders. They don't bite readily, and when they do, they have to actually chew because they've got quite small mandibles. So to break through your skin is a tricky task for them. But their venom is highly neurotoxic. Generally speaking, if you're quite a large, healthy adult, you'll be absolutely fine. But for kids or for people with heart conditions, neurotoxic venom obviously goes through the nervous system. And if you do have any heart problems, neurotoxic venom almost immediately starts to make your heart beat faster. And that can actually lead to complications. I should be fine. I'm not too worried about her, actually. I grew up with button spiders throughout my house in Johannesburg, and I never really had a problem. Now, Alicia, welcome. Alicia is 13 years old and is very excited about the rain that we've had. Now, Alicia, you want to know how will this amount of rain affect the animals, if at all? Actually, Alicia, short term, it's pretty uncomfortable for them, and especially for the antelope and the other sort of general game species, it's a bit of a scary experience because it's dark at night, there's wind, there's rain, their senses are dampened, and it's perfect cat hunting weather. Long term, it is fantastic news because it just means that that grass is going to stay a little bit greener for a little bit longer, and of course our water holes aren't going to dry up nearly as quickly as they might have without this rain. Famous Jamie quotes, circa 10th of April, I think it was, possibly 11th of April. Jamie turned around on drive and said, "I think we're done with the rain. I'm pretty sure that's all the rain that we're going to have for this rainy season." So there you go. Once again, Jamie demonstrating her supreme prowess in predicting the weather, as has happened this morning, where it is not in fact raining. It was just enough to put us in the tent and not out on bushwalk. We'll have to monitor it and see how it goes. Laurie, absolutely, the button spider is related to the black widow. The button spider is their official name, as far as I know, but they're basically the South African equivalent of a black widow. And I believe recluse spiders is another name that is used for that family of spiders in other parts of the world. I wish she'd come out. Laurie, I'd love to show her to you because I think almost everyone around the planet gets some form of button spider. And it's so instantly recognizable with that bright red abdomen. I have to tell you a funny story. A friend of ours was encouraging an interest in insect life in her young child and got them one of those little bug-catching terrarium things with a little magnifying glass attached to them, those plastic things. I had one as a kid. I'm not sure, they must still make them, obviously, because she gave him one. And he disappeared off into the garden, and she was very, very happy about his incredible joy and interest at finding various insects. And of course, the first thing that he bought to show her was a black button spider. So you can imagine that put paid to his early entomologist ideals. I'm trying to decide what we're going to do in the tent this morning. I think we're going to have to try and think of some things original to do. Luckily we have the microscope, and of course with all of this rain, hopefully it'll bring out a variety of insects, preferably not button spiders. Oh goodness gracious me, the morning is marching on, and Ali has not yet said good morning.
Well, good morning is the best thing to say early in the morning. My name is Ali, and here on camera with me I've got Ferg today. And we are pretty much busy doing a boundary patrol, or what we think is a boundary patrol. There were reports of lions north of us, towards the Manyeleti and Buffelshoek side, so we're just out, see if perhaps we can find any tracks, maybe the animals themselves, because yesterday they were a bit sneaky with the rain. But who knows, hopefully we will get lucky. Whew. It is quite a chilly morning today. After the rain yesterday, it kind of stopped throughout the night, but now it's just a slight drizzle. So hopefully that's into the sun will start shining, but also out. All right. Alright, let's see what's up this way. Robin, you would like to know if we find more animals in the rain, I believe is your question. FC, would you mind just... Giant snails. Okay, thanks, Berg. I think my ear is not working properly. Yes, we actually have a very good chance of finding a few more snails, giant land snails, here in southern Africa, which have become a bit of a pest elsewhere in the world, but they're very nice to see around here. So yes, because they require a lot of moisture and for the environment around them to be a bit more wet, this is a very good time to try and see them. So often we'll find them crossing the road or on the sides of the roads. And they are one of my favorite animals around, maybe because SpongeBob had a friend called Gary, and when I see them I always think of SpongeBob and my younger brother, which is quite an odd thing to say, I know. But we've got a very good chance. So hopefully we'll be able to see some of them around today. So I think the days are starting to fade away now. Fade away into winter. So as it gets drier, then a lot of these animals that require a lot of moisture are going to be slightly harder to see, because they're just going to be tucked away, preventing themselves from getting dehydrated. But right there in front of us, we've got some of the most friendly creatures on the road in the mornings. These are the Francolins, who are up and about, one of the eager birds that have started walking in search of food. There we go. So this one's the Crested Francolins. You can see that white stripe above the eye once they start moving. Them and Impala have been our good companions throughout the morning. So you see it is a bit wet on the sides of the road. All of the grass is making them wet, so what better way to start looking for food than to actually look in an area that's quite clear. So that's often while they'll walk around in the road. Easier for them, they get less wet, and just more simple overall. There's a little trio of Francolins all the way up there. Let's just see if maybe we can... Oh, there's a fourth one, look at that. And I hear a few more of them calling around, or is it them already? I think it was them. So you see, birds are territorial animals, or some of them, like the lions and the leopards and the bigger predators around here. But instead of roaring, what they do is they start calling the way that we heard them. So over here, look at that fluff. I believe we probably have a family of the two adults and then the younger ones, or the youngsters, just to the right. But I think the youngsters are almost into adults now. Look at them. It's always funny seeing birds in the rain. They seem completely out of place. Are you guys coming to investigate us too? Somebody got a fright? You see, these little guys will start looking for smaller insects, seeds from the grass, just everything around. Alrighty. Okay guys, I think you've been friendly enough, but we would like to continue our road. Come along. Jesus. Sorry, I'm just having a bit of trouble here with my radio. James, you'd like to know if we can look at the dams. We are on our way, trying to get to some of them just to see what's popping around there. But I think it's going to be a little bit further than what we are now. Just hopefully our road will take us into Buffelshoek Dam, if I am not entirely lost. And that is where we're headed. So I'm hoping something will be around there. I think I did take a bit of a detour. Alright. While we look for a dam to ourselves, let's go to Brent, who's managed to find his own.
Well, we've moved past the dam. We're still looking for any sign of leopards. Now, the amount of rain we had last night and the day before, it wasn't really enough to affect the overall sort of water in the dams. And I think with the hot sun and stuff like that, yesterday would probably negated majority of the water that fell. So unfortunately, it's really good for the ground and the grass and places like the Mawati. And last year we didn't get this late rain, which meant that the Mawati was bone dry. The elephants couldn't even dig down to the water. But this year, I think with that big rain and this late rain, the Mawati is going to be a very important little part of the ecosystem this dry season, because the elephants are going to keep digging that open, keeping the water out. No. So I just heard that they found Shongile last night, but quite far south. So she moved quite far south from where Tristan had her. And I know the guys are following up on her right now, but it doesn't look like she's come north, and neither has young Hosana. And they're hanging around an area down where the little Gowrie camp is, and they seem to be enjoying it there. There's some shallow pans that still have catfish in them, so it seems like they've been taking advantage of those catfish. Now, of course, there were wild dogs running around down there last night, so they could easily come back to the north, or they haven't come to the north yet. We'll go. That's why we're just going to keep checking the southern boundary all the way through. Now, it sounds like no one is checking Cheetah Plains this morning, so maybe we'll head that way. They've possibly got a bit more rain than we got on Djuma. It seems to be normal when it's been raining that Cheetah Plains gets a little bit more. Now, of course, there were two male lions, the two Birmingham boys, that were up in the north, and they could have very easily have headed south and crossed from Torchwood into Chitwa. So we're just going to go very slowly down Gowrie Main towards Cheetah Plains driveway. Ooh. Well, the one positive thing about this drizzly weather is that, of course, the cats could be moving. Oh, it's an update coming in. Sounds like they found the Torchwood lions in the north. Yeah, quite far to the north. Oh, they're going to where they were left last night. Okay, there we go. So okay, they're quite far away. There's no chance of them coming into us, unfortunately. I really want to see the Torchwood pride. Nice big pride, lots of cubs. Now, the other thing why I want to go check Cheetah Plains is you never know whether the Sticks pride have decided to make an appearance on Cheetah Plains. Fingers crossed. And of course I would love to go see if we can find Nkanyen and Vutomi. The grass is long, but Wiem, are we feeling lucky, Wiem?
Of course.
Of course we're feeling lucky. So let's go to the east and see if we can magic up some big cats from the long grass of Cheetah Plains. While we do that, let's go back to Jamie, who's high and dry in the tent.
High and dry and thoroughly enjoying the comfort of the tent this morning. Of course, the roofs keep the cameraman and the equipment very, very dry, but not so much for the unfortunate soul who sits in the front and tells the vehicle where to go, also known as the driver or the guide. It must be very early in the morning. A recluse spider is a violin spider, not a widow spider. I'm obviously having a moment of brain mix-ups. Violet spiders are equally as nasty, in fact probably more nastier than the brown button spiders or the black button spiders, just in the sense that once you get bitten by them, generally speaking neurotoxic venom is fought off very quickly, but a cytotoxic bite from a recluse spider or from a violent spider becomes a horrible open weeping sore that can actually result in really serious scarring. Jandre, can you remember which is the one that Steph had on his head? I can't remember if it was a sac spider or a violent spider. Both of them have cytotoxic venom, so cell-destroying venom, and one of them put Steph in hospital for a while because he got bitten on the top of his head, and obviously that's a very, very dangerous place to get bitten. It's just so close to all sorts of vital things like, you know, your brain. Now, I just wanted to show you a picture of our brown button spider since she was playing shy before we go on to the subject of the weather. That is pretty much exactly what she looked like. So button spiders and widows. Button spiders are the South African members of the genus. Widows are the American version of, or American members of that particular genus. So they're very much related to each other. And that's exactly what she looked like. That perfect hourglass shaped red orange marking on her abdomen. Very, very distinctive. Very fortunately a very easy spider to recognize. And I think we might continue on the subject of spiders because I imagine that some of you have lots and lots of questions on them. Like ants, for example. And you wanted to know, why are they called button spiders? I guess it's because they look like buttons. They've got very, very solid round abdomens. I can't think of any other reason why they should be called button spiders. I don't think there's any tradition of using them as buttons. It would probably be a very risky tradition indeed, and very peculiar, I imagine. But I think it's probably because they look very much like buttons. Their abdomen pretty much, particularly in black widows or black button spiders, pretty much dominates the spider. They've got very, very round abdomens. I guess that's why they're called buttons. And they're also shiny. Black button spiders are very, very shiny. And I remember many, many years as a kid, they used to live in our parking garage at home in Johannesburg. And I remember my mom so clearly saying to me, don't play with them, but just leave them. And none of us ever got bitten. Ever, ever. My mom once had one fall all the way on the top of her head and all the way down her body, and it still didn't bite her. So they are actually relatively innocent spiders. Sac spiders, on the other hand, with their cytotoxic venom, love to make their webs and lay their eggs in egg casings, in sort of silvery, covered up in their silvery webbing, in the folds of curtains. They quite like bedclothes, which is why they're actually one of the spiders that results in quite a few very nasty bites. But those are the big ones out here. Violent spider, the button spiders, and the sac spiders. Those are the spiders that you really want to avoid. Right. Hold that thought. X-Ranger? Yes. Indeed they are. In fact, I think that's also in exactly the same genus. So X-Ranger was asking, are they related to the redback spider of Australia? And yes, as far as I know, they're part of the same genus. So it's just different names given by different people across the various continents, as they're pretty much found all over the world. In certain circumstances, of course, they've been introduced. X-Ranger, just while I'm thinking about it, I actually owe you an apology. From, I think, the last time I was in the tent, I was talking about how much I wanted a cup of Milo. And for some silly reason, I assumed it was a South African invention, and of course it wasn't. It was an Australian invention. Milo is a chocolate malt drink, and this is an odd sort of change of direction that this conversation has taken. But for some reason, I always thought it was South African, so I'm sorry. Full credit to the Australians and not the South Africans in that sense. Right, we're looking at the weather just to see exactly what's going on. And of course, this is a fantastic website where you can have a look at the wind that is blowing all over the world and the cloud cover as well. And that little green dot is sort of roughly where we are. So, Jandre, I think it's safe to say that it's over now. Now I've said that, of course, it's going to absolutely pummel down. There we go. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer. Okay, that's as close as we can go. So you can see the big winds building up off the eastern coast of South Africa, but we are pretty much, I think, now in a very much a lull. And speaking of lulls, I think I'm probably lulling you all into a state of sleep. Let's go across to some elephants to wake you up.
Well, for the time being, it's only one elephant, but it's always better than no elephant. This is a young boy, and I have a very strong feeling it's the same one we saw yesterday on our afternoon drive. And funny enough, he seems to be missing a tusk, but actually it's just growing underneath his trunk. So it's one of those funny tusks that isn't growing properly. He was hiding behind the terminalias over there, the tree that he's busy destroying. But I think he's just resorted to feeding now, which is great for us, because then, I mean, there's no tree in front of him, so we can see him properly. Look at that. Good morning. So, just like we were commenting on yesterday, I have a strong feeling he's just trailing a herd who's probably just slightly north than what we are now. But because of the weather and the rain and everything else, maybe he's just taking a bit longer to get to them, or maybe he's just not that interested in catching up with them. What are you actually eating? Elephants have a funny way. A lot of the times they'll pretend like they're eating while they figure out what's actually happening. But saying that, we can see the movement in this jaw of this particular boy. I think he's not lying to us. I think he is actually eating. Elephants are very, very incredible and intelligent creatures. So a lot of the times they'll pretend that they're doing something else while they assess what's happening around them. So when we first arrived, he was a bit wary of us, and he then pretended that he was eating. Then he proceeded to break the tree, but I think he's calmed down now. Just flinging in the side. He always has a typical boy attitude. Busy having something to eat, maybe more than you can chew over there, don't you think? I think that branch is a bit big for you. Stop feeding now. Well, hello. Yeah, there we go. So it is funny to see, he's a lot darker than what elephants normally look like. This is because his skin has been absorbing a lot of the rain that has been falling down between last night and today. And sometimes they will go underneath a tree just to avoid getting properly rained on. But as you can imagine, there aren't really places for an elephant to hide and be safe from all of the rain. So it is funny, if you look at his skin, if you see just that little part behind the ears, and it's looking a bit lighter than the rest of his body. So I think he did manage to find something to, thank you for the ear, to just cover himself up, or, well, somewhere where he wouldn't be rained on as much. And now he's just busy there. Busy feeding. I wonder, I feel like this weather sometimes doesn't make them as happy as they could be. I think probably a bit stressed out with the rain and everything else that's been happening. We did have quite a bit of lightning yesterday. Aaron, you'd like to know what are the similarities in the ecosystem between South Africa and Venezuela? Funny enough, I think one of the reasons that hooked me on South Africa is that the bush, the scenery, the vegetation looks very similar. We also have species of acacias in Venezuela, similar species of trees that we call sausage trees. And so it does, up to an extent, it didn't feel too different for me. But obviously, back in Venezuela, we don't have elephants, we don't have rhinos, and we just have other creatures around. Oh, there you can see the tusk. You see just underneath the trunk, making himself look bigger, putting that head up and, bobbing it around a little bit, just to let us know who's in charge. So, yes, we also have big cats. We have, I don't know if you've heard of ocelots and jaguars, which are similar, as if I can compare them to maybe the size of a serval for an ocelot and then a jaguar for the leopards. So those animals are around, and then they are our top predators. However, South Africa, it's quite unique, and wherever you go around this area, you just might find different things. I would say the main difference with Venezuela is the lack of big wildlife. We don't have all these wonderful creatures that you have here in South Africa, which shapes the environment in a bit of a different way. Because obviously, by not having elephants, we don't have the same scenery, I could say. I see he's just busy here behind the bushes. Wild Ball, you'd like to know if elephants ever eat without using their trunks. Yes and no, I'd like to say. So younger elephants, often because they haven't learned how to use their trunk properly, it's almost like the trunk has a personality of its own and starts moving all around, and it's hard. Imagine like children when they're trying to learn how to write or use a pencil, that they don't have that ability quite yet. They have to practice it a lot. So often you will find that they'll go and cheat almost. So instead of eating, when they do start eating and are not just on milk, when they have to eat, they will go down on their knees and then just try to eat something, or if they see a tree, they will try to get to the branch with their mouth directly, because they still haven't learned how to use their trunk to pull that branch down and eat it. But most of the adult elephants, you'll see them eating their own, using their trunk and then putting food in their mouth. I have seen, however, an elephant in the Okavango Delta in Botswana on a trip, and unfortunately it had a snare, or it had a snare around his trunk, and then the tip of the trunk, the part that they use almost as their fingertips that allows them that bit of an ability, it was gone. So I'm sure, probably the snare around it managed to just sever the tip of the trunk. So he was doing a good effort of, just like the little calves, just putting his mouth directly and then somewhat using his trunk, but not entirely. So they are very, like I was saying earlier, very intelligent creatures, and they know how to survive and just use whatever is around them. But more commonly than not, when you see a big elephant like this, and you will see them use the trunk either to pick up roots or fruits, or they just grab the branches of the tree and then put them in their mouth. When you see them eating directly with their mouth or just kneeling down or anything, it's more likely the case of a little calf that just doesn't really know what to do, or an older elephant that has a bit of an issue. Alright, I think our friend has gone into the bushes, so we're gonna leave him and carry on into our boundary/dam patrol. Let's see what's around there. Sandy, you'd like to know if any of the presenters see animals with deformities. Well, it depends on what you'd like to consider a deformity. I think the one we just saw that we all got to see had a bit of a deformed tusk. So a lot of the times it'll happen that animals just have things that have been modified, like this particular tusk, or they grow up that way. So normally elephant tusks, if you guys have seen them before, they grow like this. But this particular male had one growing like this and then one going down. So that does count as a deformity, because it's not really the way all of elephants look like. But every now and again, yes, we do manage to see them. Something odd. I believe there's a lion in the southern Sabi-San that's got a canine hanging out, because apparently they think, if I'm not mistaken, got kicked by an animal, either a buffalo or a giraffe, I think, when it was hunting. Other than that, odd case scenario, we will see something with a snare or with the snare wound, but I don't think it depends. So sometimes you do see them, sometimes you not, but we see it less than you would normally expect, which is a good sign. It means that our animals around here are healthy. Okay, we're gonna carry on looking for more water and more elephants, but in the meantime, let's go across to Jamie, see if she managed to find another spider.
No spiders yet, although I haven't actually checked in the buffalo skull where the violent spider has been living for the past few months. I wonder if she's still there. Ali's raised some very interesting subjects, by the way. She's going looking for water. It's all blowing into the tent. It really is thoroughly miserable out there, and it actually turns out that we're best served in the tent because going out on bushwalk in this sort of weather would have been relatively disastrous for us. But Ali's raised some interesting points. She's been talking about deformities. And of course we see the gorgeous Fang, which is an elephant, a female elephant, with a completely backwards curving tusk, just one, and it curves completely back to the point that it touches her leg when she walks. And it's fascinating to look at, to see the way in which she's adapted to use it. And it seems like it's actually her dominant tusk, because it's got a really nice, neat notch. And she's actually broken off the tip recently, and she started forming a new notch, which generally happens when elephants use one tusk over the other. So they pull branches down over it, grasses over it. And if you think about that process for hours and hours at a day, it's bound to have an effect on the tusk itself. But of course, Ali also touched upon the fact that she's seen elephants that have been snared before, or unfortunate victims of a snare. And I think that raises quite an interesting subject, because it's not something that we generally talk about, which is, of course, our impact as a species on the animals in the environment out here, because, of course, we now coexist and we're part of that whole environment. And a snare is a truly, truly horrible thing. It's put out in order to catch things like antelope, generally along fence lines, but it can be absolutely anywhere. And the unfortunate thing about it is it's not, I mean, it would be bad enough if antelope fell victim to it, but it's not just antelope. Things particularly like hyenas that tend to be attracted to the smell of a snare will go up and have a sniff of it and then find themselves caught with it around their necks. And one thing that I've noticed both with hyenas and of course those elephants with the tips of their trunks missing is the extreme resilience that they show, the way in which they've adapted, and the short-trunked ellie comes to mind, the way in which they've adapted to not having that prehensile tip to their trunk, and the way in which they have to change their feeding pattern. And there's one bull elephant with half a trunk. I don't know whether or not that was a snare or a crocodile. We won't know for absolute certain. It was probably a snare. And he actually, when he's feeding, he has to hunch his entire back once he's kicked up a ball of grass and put it into his mouth. So they do fall victim to a very unfortunate practice. However, bear in mind, and I'm not defending it in any way, shape or form, it's probably, in a way, one of the less insidious poaching events that happen out here, because bear in mind that there are a lot of people who are poor, desperate and hungry, and who had been living off this land until it was fenced off as part of a reserve. And whilst that is a wonderful thing, just a degree of understanding as to where they come from. These are very different people to the ones that go out and shoot things like elephants and rhino. These are people who are doing it in order to get food for themselves or to create a market of food, to sell off the bushmeat and the skins. Doesn't make it right, but it's just something to consider, because animals and humans interact, they have to. And we've got a very interesting way of dealing, or a contrasting way of dealing with things in South Africa, where of course a reserve is a reserve. Where we are at the moment is probably the safest place an animal can be. It's fenced off, okay, it's 4 million hectares, so 8.5 million acres of reserve, but it's still fenced off. So those animals do have a barrier to going into the communities. Sometimes that barrier is crossed or broken. Often things break out of the reserves. Leopards, of course, cannot be fenced. Warthogs, hyenas, they'll go wandering about. But it's a complete contrast to, say, Kenya, where there is an almost completely open system in the way in which the reserves operate. And you'll get cattle wandering through onto nature reserves. And they both, of course, come with their advantages and disadvantages, because people become more invested in that land and protecting that land if they are allowed to utilize it. Yet at the same time, the animals don't have a barrier, so you get a situation where elephants will start to move into the crops during certain times of the year and start to feed off people's agriculture. That's a difficult situation. Where is the balance? What is the right answer? We don't really know. But it is an interesting point to consider, because as human beings, we do manage our environment. This is probably one of... No, that's actually not true. I was going to say it's the least managed. That's not really true. But what I'm trying to say is that the bigger the area, the less management there has to be, but there's still that interaction with the outside communities. And there's a lot to be said for getting people invested in reserves as a future source of income for them, rather than this land being utilized as, I don't know, as grazing for their cattle. And that's where tourists come in. And that's where tourists are so very, very important. So when we see other vehicles, we are thrilled that the tourists are coming to see our amazing animals, because the more they come to see the animals, the more jobs are created, the more money is flowing into a reserve like this, and the better it is for the future of these animals. That was quite a deep topic of conversation. I think we should move on to lighter things, go all the way across to the east and see what's happening on a dark and rainy Cheetah Plains.
It is not warm. I've even succumbed to having to have a blankie on. It is very wet. We went through some quite hard rain on the way down here. Now VM, of course, is as snug as a bug in a rug in the back of the tent, but unfortunately all the camera equipment and batteries and other complicated stuff are all snug as a bug in a rug. However, I'm quite the opposite. But it is worth it if we find something fascinating. And a cold, wet, bad day in the bush beats a good day in the city any day. So hopefully we're going to have some luck. We're on the northern edge of Cheetah Plains. I'm just having a perusal down the boundary. And VM and I were discussing what we could be finding down here on Cheetah Plains. And of course we always hope for the cheetah boys. It seems like an age since we saw them last. And in Kanyeni, Vutomi, Quarantine, all possibilities. Now if any of the leopards are on the move, they are unlikely to be walking through the wet grass. I think they're probably wet enough as it is, so they're probably going to be wanting to walk down the roads. And it is quite nice. We are the only car on Cheetah Plains at the moment, so we have got the whole of Cheetah Plains to explore all by ourselves. Isn't that just wonderful? Now I do like the feeling of not having to worry about other vehicles around. It's quite pleasant every now and then to just have a whole area to yourself and look at what you want to do. Now remember, hashtag Safari Live if you want to ask us any questions. I know Jamie has been discussing elephants, and elephants are one of the animals that really actually quite like this weather. So who knows, maybe we'll see a nice big herd of ellies frolicking in the drizzle. But there's so far no tracks of elephants, no tracks of lions, no tracks of anything. Hi, Pugsomatic. Pugsomatic's wondering, are forest elephants smaller than the ones we find in southern Africa? Most definitely. A big forest elephant bull weighs about 3.5 tons, which is about the size of an adult female here. And a big elephant bull here will weigh sometimes over 6 tons. So yes, they're about double the size, the big bulls. Now of course their eye color is a bit different, and you probably find that the forest elephant's eye is quite a lot lighter. It could be an adaptation to living in those thick dark forests. Also of course their tusks are differently shaped. They go far more down as not to get caught when they're moving through the forests. Now I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time with forest elephants, and I genuinely believe living in the forest they've become, oh yay, there you go, elephants. Talking about forest elephants, I said living in the rainforest, I spend a lot of time with them, and I believe their eyesight is far worse than the savanna elephants, and that could be because it is so dark in those forests. And I've spent a lot of time on foot with forest elephants, and they don't see you up until the last second. They rely a lot more on their smell and on their hearing than they do on their sight. A lot of people say elephants' eyesight's very bad. I wouldn't say it's very bad, it's just not as good as some of the other things. They still have reasonable eyesight. Hello, little man. What a lovely way to start our drive on Cheetah Plains with an elephant roadblock. Now look at the little one. Now that looks like, yes, so that's fresh dung from what looks to be the matriarch. And the others are picking out of it. Now you don't see that too often. They're actually eating the dung. There could be various different reasons for that. Quite often, but not at the moment, it's for marulas, undigested marulas that might be in there. But you could find that those elephants are missing something in their gut flora, the bacteria in their gut, and eating the feces of a big adult will help restore whatever gut flora they indeed need. And you can see they look very content in this weather, and you'll notice the ears are not flapping too much because it is nice and cool. They don't need to flap their ears to cool down at the moment. Kevin is wondering, how do I tell who the matriarch of the herd is? It's the big female with the nice long even tusks to the right. And I might be wrong, but not just looking at the structure of the elephants I can see. She's by far the oldest, and therefore probably the matriarch. There could be more elephants. There might be another elephant that is the matriarch, but just looking at the structure of what we can see at the moment, I would say she's the matriarch. And then we got a young bull, and there's actually two smaller ones behind. So there is probably some more elephants around here that we can't see, because there's the ones we can't really see at the back are too close in age to be from the same female. Are we going to have a little sand bath? Look at these leaning against the other one. A very tightly packed little bunch. Hey, little guys. There's a little one there, still eating feces, so probably trying to sort out the gut flora. Now, Holly is wondering, can an elephant's tusk pierce the skin of another elephant? Most certainly it can, Holly, and does, especially when the bulls are fighting. Isn't that cute? When bulls are fighting, it is... Not only can it pierce the skin, there's a couple of skulls that have been found where the tusk has gone straight through the skull of another elephant. There's a particularly incredible skull that is in the Letaba Elephant Museum, where the tusk of the aggressor, but probably two bulls fighting. There were two bulls fighting over females, but the tusk is actually embedded in the skull of another elephant. I'm pretty sure there should be another two, looking at the age groups, adult females around here. Louis is wondering, do elephants have nostrils in their trunk? Louis, those are their nostrils. That is their nose. So they breathe with it. But of course, because it's got a prehensile tip, they're able to do, look, you can see they're able to pick things up with it. They can suck up to nearly 2 gallons of water into their trunk when they're adults. So it's an adapted nose to be far more useful than just a breathing apparatus. They can drink from it. They can pick things up with it. They can reach up to the top leaves with it. So it is a very useful appendage. And there's over 100,000 muscles and tendons in an elephant's trunk. B. Smithy T is wondering, hello, little man. Yes, you're very scary. I'm shaking my boots. Oh, he's stalking us. B. Smithy T, I'll get to your question in a second. Hello, mister. What you want? What you want? Are you feeling sheepish now because we didn't run away? Now, B. Smithy T is wondering, is their trunk, their nostrils separated all the way into the skull, all the way up to the nasal cavity. So it'll run from the tip that we can see there. Oh, he's got a little recessus vine, all the way up till where the trunk reaches into the nasal cavity. And then, of course, like us, our nostrils are separate till we get into our nasal cavity. Okay, it looks like we might be. He's either digging up a bulb from that little vine he just ate, or I think that's what he's doing. He's looking for the bulb. Rebecca is wondering, do elephants normally huddle together like that when it's raining? Not necessarily only when it's raining. They'll huddle together quite often at all different times. Oh, look at him. He's really after something tasty down there. Now, as I said, he pulled out a little creeper, and a lot of the creepers have a big bulbous root system, or a big bulb that can hold a lot of water and a lot of minerals. And I think he might have managed to sniff one out. And sometimes these bulbs are massive, even for a small creeper. They can weigh up to 3 or 4 kilograms. Normally they're about the size of an onion. Let's see what he's digging out there. See how he's using his foot. I think that's quite a big one, judging by when he gets hooked there with... Look at that! Oh, he nearly got it out. I thought I saw a bit of movement. So using the back of his ankle to try remove the bulb he's after. Now, there you go. You can see a root there. He could just be after the roots of what sometimes is called elephant candy, which is next to him, which is the round leaf teak. Oh, what? You can see the soil move when he uses his ankle. Look at that. There's something in there. Let's see. Oh, there we go. He's got it. That's big. It's a big bulb he's dug out there. I think it's from one of the recessus vines, but it's very difficult to say. Oh, you dropped it, silly. Now, if I was going to use... Look at that. Now, often, they won't eat the whole bulb. We'll watch them... Oh, you might even hear him crunch it open. Oh, we've got another little boy coming to inspect us. He's going to come right up to us. Hello, mister. Oh, yes, you're scary. Now, if I had to see that sort of head movement from an adult female, I would obviously be a lot more concerned. With little boys, it's normally just playing. Oh, there we go. He's showing off now. Yes, you're very scary. Now, I was answering a question before I got distracted by the Ellie digging out the bulb, and that was that do matriarchs fight for dominance? Not normally. Normally, if there is a serious sort of altercation between the adult females over who's the matriarch, the female will split and form a sub-herd. But I'm going to sit here because I've got the best roadblock and traffic jam in the world at the moment, which is a lovely herd of Ellies. And they are truly the giants of Africa. Oh, they're going to start playing. Let's just see what they do for a few seconds longer. Okay, it's all calming down. So we're going to leave the giants of the mammalian world and go across to a giant of the gastropod world.
Well, we have been lucky enough to find the giant of the snails. Robin, you're 7 years of age, and you were asking earlier on about the giant land snails. So here is one. Yay! As a predictor, or as could be expected, we found it crossing the road. It's quite a big road, and although it's a giant snail, it's still quite a bit of a distance, but it's just busy going into the grass over here. Just want to stand next to it and put my hand against it, so you'll get a bit of an idea of just how giant the African giant land snails can get. Ooh, very, very cold today. Right, so if I put my hand next to it, I don't know if you guys will see it from here, is about this big when compared to my hand. Ooh, I think I've given it a bit of a fright and it's retreating into its shell, so I'm just going to leave it alone so that it comes back out and then we can enjoy the view a bit more. So the wonderful thing about the giant land snails is that they'll carry their house with them. So if anything were to bother it, like we did, maybe, you know, it heard my boots on the sand, it just retreats back. It's got a nice safe place, doesn't really need to worry about anything else, and then once it feels like it's safe again, then off it goes with its two little antennae and just carry on trailing the area. So it is lucky to see them, well, at this time of the year. It's nice and wet, so it's probably just moving along, trying to go find some food, like everybody else seems to be doing this morning. It is quite cold, so I'm sure that's its next stop. Kirk, you'd like to know how big these giant snails are. I would say this one in length is probably about 10 centimeters or so, maybe about, with the shell, maybe about 7. So if you have the palm of your hand, they'll probably be able to cover most of it. So they are not giant, they are giant compared to the smaller ones that we get around here, but they're not big like you would imagine, for example, the size of a tortoise or anything else. They are much smaller. This one, however, is a good size. I would say it's an average size, but they get bigger than the one that we are busy looking at right now. Isn't that wonderful? I love it how they just, with all their little muscles, they're able to slide almost on top of the grass and the sand. And as you can see, it's just using all its antenna and everything just to feel what's around it and just to make sure that wherever he's going, everything seems to be fine. Just a bit of a sensory organ, like the whiskers on a cat. Justin, you'd like to know how long it would take a giant land snail to travel a kilometer. Whew. Well, considering we've been here for maybe, I would say 10 minutes in total, maybe 5. My grasp of time might not be that accurate. I would reckon maybe a few hours. They can travel faster than what this guy is doing, but often they choose not to. So I think a few hours is probably a good guess. They are very small creatures, and a kilometer is a very long measure for them, let's put it that way. It'll be interesting though. Imagine all the adventures it could have in a kilometer. I don't know if there have been any studies about the amount of terrain that a giant land snail can cover in a few hours. It would be quite interesting to go and find out. So if you guys want to help us out and just see or let us know if there have been any studies or if anyone's got an idea of how much they can travel in a day, #SafariLive, and then we'll be able to solve this mystery. It's actually a very good question. I'd never thought about it before. You see, now it's heading into a bit of a thicker part. Appelag, you'd like to know if they can go inside of the water. They're not like the snails, for example, or the little things that you see in the ocean where they'll live happily underneath the water. They can cross little puddles and so on, but they will not live in it like some of the other creatures that we see. They do prefer moist climates like the one today, just because look at them, they're a creature just like frogs that need a lot of moisture around them, just to make sure they don't dry out, as they probably absorb all the water directly through their skin. But as far as I know, and I could be mistaken, I don't think they can live underwater. They are called the land snail for a reason, so their main area where they live is on land. But I'm sure if they had to do a bit of a submarine crawl on the edges of a pan, I reckon they could. Tim, you'd like to know what is the lifespan of a giant land snail. My best guess would be maybe just a couple of seasons, depending on how dry it gets. A lot of the times we'll see them, the eggs will come out just as the conditions start becoming right at the beginning of the rainy season, and they'll mature just throughout that season. And if they're lucky enough and the conditions are not too dry during the winter month, or not too hot, they'll be able to hibernate and then just make sure they're able to carry on throughout the next season. As far as I know, not too long of a lifespan, but I will have to double check my facts on that one just to make sure that I'm not lying to you. Alright, well, I think our land snail has gone off to the road now. It's decided that this was enough. And we'll see. Sue, you'd like to know how they find a mate if they're so slow. Well, the thing is, there are quite a few of them, so that makes them slightly easier. Goodbye, good friend. But also they leave all sorts of cues in the air, in the grass, just like leopards and lions would leave their markings and start advertising. It's all a communication that's done on a level that sometimes it's not too obvious for us. So they'll leave pheromones or they'll leave smells and this kind of things just to make sure they can attract each other. The good thing about the snails is that both males and female, or I should rephrase this, there are no males and females. They're hermaphrodites, which means that all individuals have both male and female parts. So it is a bit simpler for them in the way that all they have to do is just make sure they find another snail. So they don't have to worry about finding a male snail or a female snail. And then both of them can lay their little eggs, and then the eggs will be a lot more than you would have from just one, because then you'll have both of them, both the parents laying eggs. While we look for maybe some other snails or maybe some more of the giants, let's go across to Jamie.
Oh, here we have actually not even relatively recently deceased giant land snail, and they are truly fascinating creatures, and their shells are, like all creatures that produce shells, a true work of art when you really look at them. The perfection of the spirals within them. And it also gives you the perfect opportunity to have a look at the sense of scale of a giant land snail. So a giant land snail can live, I would say, around about 7 years or so. So it's a good couple of years that it will survive and continue to grow. And we see big ones and little ones, but this is probably one of the biggest shells. Oh, this is about as big as a giant land snail would get. If you factor in the body, this snail was probably once the size of my entire hand. Now, they are truly absolutely massive. And what always fascinates me is the fact that they are capable, their bodies are capable of producing something like this that continues to grow. And of course, I know we as human beings, we produce fingernails that continue to grow, and we produce hair and so on. But there's something extraordinary about the shell because it's got this incredibly smooth internal surface, mother of pearl type feel to it. It's very, very, very smooth. It feels what it feels like. And all of this shell, this entire shell, is produced by a complex arrangement of proteins within the snail's body. And so the snail's epidermis, the outside part of its body, will produce the proteins that then basically create this perfect environment for a crystallization of those proteins and polysaccharides as well. So it really is a complex structure. And it gives us a nice opportunity to look at it because we've got the microscope, which I'll go to in a second. The reason that it's white, and Ali's, of course, living land snail was completely brown in color, is apparently the external layer is the part of it that's very resistant to scratches and abrasions, but it is the part of it that wears down the quickest, which makes sense. It's the one that is exposed to the elements, and it's basically bleached by the sun and the wind and the fact that the snail is no longer providing that constant flow of proteins to produce it. So speaking of the structure of the shell, I think we should have a look at it under the microscope so you can have a look at just how crystalline it truly is. Now let me see if I can get this right. I think the best way we're going to do this is to pop it on here and do some gentle focusing. There we go. So we've got the different shards and parts of the shell. There you go. Isn't that cool? It almost, don't you think it almost looks like quartz? Like quartzite? There's something about that shine and that gleam. And you can see, of course, there's a sort of crisscrossing pattern of scratches on the surface of the shell. That's just basic surface impact. You can just see the remaining few streaks of that pigment before it too is bleached away. I wonder how quickly that happens. I actually don't know. I don't know how quickly it goes from brown to white once a snail is deceased. Be very interesting to know. Now, Sander, while we look at the shell, which is of course a protective mechanism to try and... Oh, farm doc, I apologize. That was not at all what I heard. Farm doc, you want to know what animals prey upon giant land snails. Lots and lots and lots of things. As unfortunately for the giant land snail, whilst it does have this wonderfully protective outer layer to its shell, it's not exactly the speediest of creatures, is it? I mean, in terms of all of the creatures out here, Gregory the tortoise is much, much faster than the giant land snail. Leopards will eat them. Absolutely will eat them if they find them. They can crunch through that shell easily. So will hyenas. So will actually any of the cat species if they can get themselves sort of into that position. Then you'll get things potentially for a small one, something like a mongoose would be a threat to a giant land snail. Human beings eat them as well. I can't say I find that particularly appetizing, but then I've never really been a snail type of girl myself, but it has been in the past an important not staple, but supplement to people's diet living out here in terms of the access to protein. I can only imagine it must be terribly rubbery, and I'd actually feel horribly guilty because it takes them so long to grow to that size. And, as Ali was discussing, it's not all that easy for them to try and find each other in between these enormous distances and the fact that they do move so slowly. So the whole reproductive process is actually quite slow. What else would prey on them? Birds. Birds would also be a potential threat to them. A bird's talons, quite a big bird, would be able to either just turn the snail over and get into the fleshy bit underneath, because of course the snail can only, we've actually got two here, the snail can only retreat as far as here. Its entire body will disappear, but this entire section here is completely exposed. So as long as something pulls open or rolls over the snail, it'll be very, very easy to get in there. So there are lots of creatures for whom a giant land snail is the perfect snack. I do not count myself in that group. I was going to say something. Now, Andy, you want to know if there's any similarities between snail shells and terrapin shells. No. I'm going to show you why. Not much of a similarity anyway. So let's have a look at our tortoise shell, which is basically the same structure as a terrapin. So let's go with tortoise, just because we happen to have a tortoise shell, not a terrapin shell. The shell of a tortoise is bone. That is proper solid bone. So it is much harder than that of the snail shell, or the land snail shell. We call them shells just as a sort of generic term, but really a tortoise's carapace and plastron, carapace as being the top, plastron at the bottom, is made up of fused bone plates. And underneath, I'm going to try and do this so that I can light it up for Jeandre. Let me just grab my torch. Let me see if I can do this. I think this is the one you can see it on. You can sort of see it. Jeandre, let's try. I'm trying to see in there. Oops, sorry, Jeandre. I'll just headbutt you quickly.
90 degrees, right?
90 degrees, like 90 degrees. There we go. There we go. Oh, I think my torch is dying. That you can see over there, inside there, is the spine fused to the bone. So it is, of course, everything's basically made up of different structures of protein, but this is bone rather than a shell. Interesting. There you go. That is the difference between our snail shells and our tortoise shells. Right, let's go and see what those elephants are up to.
Well, the Ellies are having the best time. Look at all the little ones at the back there. There's literally a pile of elephants. And they are very, very playful in this cool weather. And look at that. What are you doing, you little monster? So wonderful to just spend time with Ellies. And quite often when we find them, they're on the move or feeding through. It's so nice to spend time with them when they're being all playful like this. Look at that. They look so content in this weather. She's got lovely straight tusks and very, very even, the big female. Now there's some more in the bush, as I said, that doesn't look like she could belong to all those babies. So there's some more all around us that we can't see. I can just hear them. But she definitely looks like the boss. And it looks like she's catching a cat nap. Is she having a little snooze? Her eyelids look a little bit droopy. She is. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to laugh so loud. Didn't wake her up. She's having a little cat nap on her feet. Now, elephants need very, very little rest. I need just an hour or two a day. Chris is wondering, how old is the baby? The baby is the one lying right on the ground. The fact we can see that much of the tusks, it's probably close on 2 to 3 years old now. And it can be quite difficult to age them. It's much easier when they're young. As they get older, they become much harder to age. And I think I've got a nice, yes, I should do. Let me just find it for you quickly. I've got a nice, I used to have an image about how to age elephants. Wild Bill's wondering, do the females find the odor of must appealing? Well, they do, but only really when they're in estrus. When they're not in estrus, they actually find the odor of musk bulls to be very worrying. Hello, big girl. So when they are not in estrus, they actually get quite upset by the odor of must, and they'll try to stay away from musk bulls. So it's only when they're in that heightened hormonal state that they are receptive to musk bulls. Ah, there it is. That's what I was looking for, Vim. So there we go. There's a nice way to age elephants. Once they're adults, and especially with the females, they can be quite difficult. So A is the adult female. B is a sub-adult, which is around 15 years old. C, 6 years old. D, 2, and an infant at 1. So an infant will fit under the mom's belly. Now here's a perfect example. So that one is, as I said, around 2 to 3 years old. It cannot any longer fit under mom's tummy. So under a year old, they can normally slide under mom's belly, but after that, they're unable to. But he is having a little drink. It does look like a little boy. Hi, Danny. Danny's wondering, do their tusks stop growing at a certain age? No, Danny. The tusks will continue to grow throughout their life. So it is a constant thing. There's generally, well, not so much in the females, but in the males, there's a big thickening of the tusks when they get to around 40 and become much larger and heavier at that time. Oh, those two are up to nonsense, having a little tussle at the back. You can hear a very upset little Prinia, but I can't see it at the moment. You can hear the tick, 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 tick. Now, we've moved probably 20 meters in the last 40 minutes or so because of these ellies, and it has been very pleasant to just sit here, especially because it's so cold, and it's nice to have a lovely static sighting with ellies because, as I say, often they're on the move and we don't just get to sit with them for this long. And she's catnapping again while the baby's having a drink. So a lot of elephant sleep is literally seconds or minutes. And with the rain and stuff, there's going to be quite a lot of nice nutrient-rich food around. So it's probably why they're having such a good time this morning. They are not too worried about water or food. So it's time to have a bit of fun, have a snooze. Hi, Cindy in Kansas. Cindy's wondering, when do the males get kicked out of their groups? It all depends. There's no sort of completely fixed age, but it's anywhere from about 14 to 20 years old, all depending on their behavior. So when their hormones start getting the better of them and they start becoming a little bit over boisterous and too, look at that, and too playful, they will be expelled from the herd. And even then, they will still hang around the peripheries of the herd for quite a while unless they've found other little bachelors that they can form a group with. Michael's wondering what enables them to go so long without sleeping. Well, Michael, it's just their anatomy. It's the way they're set, because they're so big, and they don't have the best. Oh, we can hear a low rumble. Something's going on. They're talking. There's a bit of a conversation going on there, but I've stopped now. Sorry, Michael. It's their anatomy and their physiology. They need to keep feeding to keep that massive bulk well fed. So they can't afford to snooze for too long, and that's the main reason they will feed for the majority of a 24-hour period. The times where they do rest for longer periods are normally sort of between 12 and 2 in the heat of the day after their afternoon drink, or sort of between, again, 12 and 2 in the middle of the night. And again, as I say, it's little short snoozes rather than prolonged sleeping. Now we're going to maybe try and move around, go back and find a way around these ellies to get to the big open area. While we do that, let's go across to Ali, who's got something all arachnophobes will shy away from.
Well, we have managed to find a lady, a very big lady for the insect world, with a beautiful, beautiful necklace of raindrops. So over here we've got a golden orb web spider, which has become a lot more obvious to us thanks to this beautiful necklace that she has all around her, all of the raindrops just being caught in the web, and they form this beautiful, beautiful thread all around her. So it was quite easy to spot her on the side of the road once we were driving through, and then this just caught her eye. Isn't that beautiful? It is amazing how the little raindrops stick on it. David, you're wondering if the rain could potentially damage the web? The answer is yes, very likely. So this morning we've just had a bit of a drizzle, so the rain hasn't come down too hard and it hasn't been too terrible, so it's been fine all along. But imagine if we had a downpour and a proper storm and the rain, you know, when it falls on your face and it almost hurts, that kind of rain, I would imagine, would be able to break parts of the spider web, which would then cause for this spider to then have to build some areas again. Sorry guys, it seems like we have a bit of human traffic, so I'm just gonna have to move slightly just to be able to let other people go through. Okie dokie. But in the meantime, I just wanted to say thanks to... Oh, sorry. Hello, how are you? For letting us know that a snail is actually slower than what we thought, and that it will travel only about a mile in 24 hours. That's a very long time. Must be quite terrible. Justin, sorry, I don't think I named you, but again, thank you, Justin, for letting us know how slow a snail can be. I just want to go onto the spider web and see, because there's a little, so even with spiders, there are tiny little parasite spiders that are able to go in there and then just patiently wait until they can steal a bit of the kill or the insects that this golden orb web manages to find. And this tiny spider that I'm looking for is called a dewdrop spider. Dewdrop spider because it almost looks like a little raindrop on the web. So let's just have a look. Ooh, you see the web is already starting all the way here. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in your web, and I don't want to be eaten by you either. Alrighty, I can't seem to see the dewdrop spider anywhere. Oh, there it is, but I'm not too sure how we're going to be able to point it out. Let's just... Oh, now I've lost it again. I believe it's... Let's just go like this. I don't want to destroy any of her efforts. I mean, it is such a beautiful web. Just down there, it looks almost like another raindrop, which is, I would say, maybe twice the size of a normal raindrop. And it is one of the ways that they're able to stick around here for so long, is just to make sure that they're not seen or they pretend to be something else. All they have to do is, once anything gets caught in the web, they'll wait for the golden orb web to come around and then just feed of it, and they'll get a bit of the scrap. So it'll be quite easier for them to survive, as they are not constructing the web and they're not busy catching anything. And there's slightly, well, not slightly, a lot smaller actually than the female that's managed to make this web. Shame she's gone all the way up closer to the tree, just retreating away from me and the wind, because it's making all her web shake. So I'm just gonna stick away from them and make sure that I don't bother her. I'm sure it's not easy for her being out in the wind, and she is quite brave. She's just been blown in the wind all throughout. Okay, we're gonna just leave her around here and carry on. The reports are, unfortunately, that our lions have gone north. So, Nigel, you know how the raindrops stick to the web. Well, the web is not like a thread. It's not what we used to sew. It's of a very, very sticky material. So that's why they construct the webs, because they are sticky, and that's how the insects actually get caught, because they get tangled up in it and they are not able to fly away from it. So this sticky material, I would guess it's some sort of protein or enzyme that gives it this quality, is what then catches little raindrops, and then they get caught in there, and then they form this beautiful beaded necklace that they wear on their webs. Alright, like I was saying earlier, I think unfortunately our lion patrol, lion boundary drive today will not be that fructiferous, because it seems the lions have gone north onto Buffelshoek, and it's unfortunately an area we cannot traverse in. But good effort, they're not too far from the boundary, so fingers crossed we'll have them at some point during the weekend. Okay, we will carry on towards Buffelshoek Dam, see if we can find anything around there, but in the meantime, let's go across to Jamie and see what interesting facts she's got for us.
I have a couple of interesting facts for you, but we'll get onto those in a moment because they actually concern elephants, which is what you were watching with Brent. But first, I thought, well, since it is such a gorgeous spider, and because of the position and because of the sort of the way in which Ali would have to park the car, especially with the roof on, but just at that distance, I'd love to show you a picture of what is one of my absolute favorite spiders. And as much as I really do love, absolutely love and adore golden orb spiders, they're beautiful, it is the dewdrop spider that really takes the prize for one of nature's true beauties. Admittedly, not the best picture. I wish we were, Genre and I were just saying, we wish we were out on walk filming, getting right up close to those spiders. But that dewdrop spider is literally the size of a drop. If you took a pipette and filled it with mercury, obviously with gloves on because that's quite dangerous. I remember getting lectured when I was a child about the properties of liquid mercury. But anyway, if you took a pipette and you just did one little drop, that's exactly the size of that particular spider. And what brave little things they are, sort of dashing about. I assume that that color comes from trying to imitate a raindrop, or being seen as a raindrop or a drop of moisture on the web to help disguise them, because they are, of course, much smaller than the golden orb spider. And she could eat them if she happened to catch them, especially since they are kleptoparasites, so they're going to go and steal her food. Right, so that was just an opportunity to show you a picture of a magnificent spider, in my opinion, a true jewel, basically, of the African bush. And we get them, the birds, the sort of the sapphires and the rubies, and then of course you get that beautiful silver of the dewdrop spiders. What other jewels do we have, Genre? Jewel beetle? Of course, jewel beetle. Emerald coloured. Jewel beetle is still a source of frustration for Herbie, who is determined to find one, for the viewer that asked him to find one, to the point of almost recklessly endangering himself, dashing through the vegetation trying to catch one. It was hilarious to watch. But he's still determined. Every time I see him, he tells me he's going to find that jewel beetle. It's hilarious. You cannot fault the man for having sheer determination on his side. What other jewels can you think of? What do you think of the jewels of Africa? James, you want to know, sorry, I went slightly cross-eyed there trying to listen to the question and talk at the same time. You want to know whether or not any of the spiders produce pheromones to attract their prey. Not that I can think of. I am not, however, an arachnophile. I'm not an expert on spiders. I'm trying to think. I know the cogs in my head are desperately turning to see if I can think of one. I'm thinking about the spiders that imitate ants. I'm thinking about the spiders that imitate ants and whether or not perhaps there's a possibility that I'm leaning back contemplatively in my chair. I wonder if they don't produce pheromones that might, if not attract prey, certainly stop them from being surrounded or mobbed or recognized by the ants or termites that they're imitating. I have to think about that one. It's a very good question. I might have to go and do some further research on that. I'm trying to think what other insects might excrete a pheromone to attract their prey. Most of our spiders are either active hunters, jumping spiders, baboon spiders, those sorts of creatures. In other words, they go out and actively search for prey, or else you get things like that golden orb spider or the community nest spiders that essentially rely on a catchment area where they wait for some unsuspecting insect to fly smack bang into the middle of their web. I have seen a golden orb spider web catch a blue waxball before. That's how powerful those webs are. I couldn't understand it. I could see this bird flapping in mid-air, and it looked totally bizarre until my brain caught up with me and I realized it was a bird caught in a spider web. That's how powerfully strong the tensile strength of those strands of web are. And this is one of my favorite facts, and I often trot it out whenever we see the orbs, but for newer viewers, apparently, if you were to take, and I have tried this in a sort of a minor way, but if you take the anchor strand, the golden thick strand that runs across the top of the golden orb spider's web, and you fold it multiple times, if you could get one long enough, if you were to produce a strand of rope that's roughly the thickness of my index finger, or even just an old-fashioned lead pencil, you would apparently be able to stop a jet plane from taking off. Apparently that is the extent of that tensile strength, which is why biomechanical engineers are looking at it as a substance to use or to imitate as a replacement for Kevlar. Something that they're considering, sort of netting over for bulletproof vests and those sorts of things. Because, of course, as far as I know, Kevlar is not, this is a weird topic, not stab-proof. It's bulletproof. It's not stab-proof. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're looking at using spider webs or engineering something that has similar properties to spider webs. And as far as I know, it's very, very difficult to imitate. Isn't it crazy that that whole thing comes out of the body of an insect? Well, a body of an arachnid. The fact that their body is able to put together those proteins in a way that produces something as magical as a spider web, I think is truly extraordinary. To jump topics ever so slightly, because this has been on my mind ever since we had a question about the elephant's nasal cavity. And of course I'm better positioned in the tent to show you a picture of an elephant skull so that you get an idea of where the nasal cavity sits. I will show you that very quickly and then we'll see what else is out there. Let me just quickly show you. This here, if we have a look at the picture over here, this is an elephant skull. Of course it is absolutely massive. And this over here, where my funny little pointer is, that is the sinus cavity. So those are not obviously the eyes. That is the top of the trunk. That is the sinus cavity, and over here would be the orbital cavity. So that's where the eyes of the elephant sit. And the famous story, of course, was Mufufunyan, one of the magnificent tuskers of Kruger, and his blowhole at the top of his head. And it was rumored that he could breathe through that hole, almost like a whale or a dolphin, probably made by an elephant tusk.